I really like the Pokémon Academy. There's a bunch of great and fun stuff about the Academy, but the main aspect I'm focusing on today is the educational content of the Academy. It's not perfect, but it's a big improvement over the trainer schools we've had in older games. It also sets a good precedent. Pokémon games should have a more comprehensive, in-game reference for game data and mechanics consolidated in one place. I'm going to talk about things the Academy does well and where it can improve. Ultimately, the goal is to more effectively bridge the gap between casual and competitive play for a variety of learning styles. The first excellent trait of the Academy is that the educational content is optional. Sure, Scarlet and Violet, like other Pokémon games, have mandatory catching tutorials and a rival battle. However, you can beat the game and DLCs without opting into extra classes at the Academy. Good. If you know the mechanics of the game, or if you want to figure it out on your own, it should be your choice. It's important to be selective about what is encouraged in a game versus what is mandated in a game. Mandated things should be reserved for actions core to the game, like catching a Pokémon or the fact that you have to win important trainer battles. After we've forced the core demographic, the children with their ever-shrinking attention spans, to engage with the bare minimum mechanics, we can move on to encouragement and enticement. Have resources in the game that the player can elect to read, use, interact with. Put challenges that reward players that cared to learn. You're free to overlevel and tackle your way through most of the game if you want. It'll just take forever. You're free to engage with the game and use all of the mechanics to get through quicker. It's about player agency and accountability, so I'd prefer that future solutions do this rather than choke leash the player. Next, the Academy classes are accessible early in the game, and they are in a centralized place. You can opt to absorb all the knowledge before your journey, or return when you need information. Many games, especially games with JRPG roots, will have its many NPCs across the world giving you sprinkles of information about the game's mechanics. The idea is that if you get stuck, or if you're a particularly social person, you'll talk to people and seek information when you need it. For example, near Cerulean City and Vermilion City in Kanto, NPCs would talk about the small trees that need to be cut using a Pokémon move, and that you need Misty's badge to use the Pokémon move. That's acceptable design. Good optional information in the proper place at the proper time. If it's your first time, there are hints to guide you on your way. If you're on a repeat playthrough, you aren't forced to go through unskippable cutscenes or talk to NPCs with the hints, you can just solve the problem. Now, for an example of questionable hint placement, look no further than the Fuchsia City area. There is an NPC in the area that will mention that a Pokémon's moves are stronger when it is the same as the Pokémon's own type. The person is attempting to teach you about same type attack bonus, also known as stab. That's good information, but you're telling me this after I'm halfway through the game. Fuchsia City is home to the 5th badge, if you adhere to the order they appear in your badge case. If you're like me and did Fuchsia Gym 6th, then it's even later. It's not a big deal since Pokémon commonly only had their moves of their own type and then normal type filler moves as their level up moves. However, given that TMs were single use and couldn't always be farmed, it would have been nice to know that earlier. It would have also been nice if that was in an early and consolidated place like the many research books in Professor Oak's lab. Given the sheer amount of game data and mechanics added for nearly 30 years, it would be really convenient going forward to have a central place to look up things in-game, as opposed to having to Google and use online resources. Sometimes I want to know how a new move or change works without sifting through blatant clickbait, advertisements, people's headcanon, or parroted misinformation. Take it a step further and give us a game key item or menu item. I wish the Academy gave you a textbook or a portable DVD player that you could reference whenever and wherever, similar to the Teachy TV or the help system in Pokémon Fire Red and Leaf Green. The Teachy TV played out mechanics in video form for people who prefer to watch, and the help system was a fairly comprehensive guide on how to play a JRPG in general, how to menu in Pokémon games specifically, a list of definitions, explanations of mechanics, and frequently asked questions. It was very in-depth, and they didn't do that again until Black and White version. It's actually thanks to the Fire Red help system that I actually learned how physical and special was determined by type back in the day. Keep in mind that I'd played and completed Red, Yellow, Gold, and Sapphire. All those games from start to finish. However, finally in Fire Red version, I'm learning that Shadow Ball was so underwhelming on my special attackers because Ghost was actually a physical type, no matter the move. Seriously? I saw Shadow Ball as a special attack, just as magical as Thunderbolt, Psychic, or Surf. Think of the Pokémon anime. It's a big orb of heat-seeking shadowy energy when used. Mewtwo in the movie and in Smash Bros. Melee, magic shadow energy. That was such a shock. No wonder Starmie dealt so little damage using it compared to Thunderbolt. It wasn't just because there was 15 less base power, it's actually because it was coming off of the lower attack stat. Stuff like that is actually pretty important to explain, because it actually defies critical thinking. It's probably why in Generation 4 they split physical and special by move rather than type, and explicitly added that data to the moves. I know I talked about a lot in this section, but the key takeaway is that we should have a centralized location for as much reasonable game data as possible, as early as reasonably possible in the game. And it should be a series mainstay. Ideally, it's a book in your key items or a help menu in the pause menu. It really needs to be early and centralized. Next, the game explicitly gives you damage numbers for mechanics. Usually the game will talk about modifiers by using descriptors like more damage, less damage, high chance, low chance. The most explicit we usually got was the phrases double damage, half damage, and no damage. But it was for the easiest math in the game, type effectiveness. For example, without looking it up, off the top of your head, can you honestly tell me how likely a critical hit is to occur and how much it modifies damage? No, really. In your head right now, try to visualize the answer for yourself. Even if you happen to know, consider how long it took to find out and what method you had to use to get that information. Yeah, we had to use strategy guides and the internet to get exact numbers, and sometimes any number at all. Finally, in Generation 9, we get a math class that explicitly teaches it. In math class, Miss Time has the following to say. The chance of landing a critical hit is said to be 1 in 24, which figures to roughly 4.17%. The odds are more favorable for certain moves though. Why, moves such as Stone Edge and Shadow Claw have about a 12% chance. You can also use a move called Focus Energy or an item known as Dire Hit. Both raise the critical hit ratio by 2 stages. That's a 50% chance to land a critical hit. It feels great to land a critical hit, but perhaps not so great to be struck by one. There's a surprising amount of mathematical probability hidden in Pokemon battles, you know? If you're able to do the calculations that'll swing luck in your favor, it may open the door for more strategic choices for you during battle. It can't be understated how much of a big leap it is for the mainline series to explicitly tell you that there's a 4% chance to crit when using the average move, even going as far as to explain critical hit ratio changes. It's even later mentioned that when you crit, it deals 1.5 times the damage, which is good because older fans might still be used to the double damage that crits used to do back in the day. I like when games consistently give explicit numbers rather than use vague expressions like a little, greatly, boosts, slightly. It's even worse when the expressions that are used aren't even consistent. For example, how many moves with secondary effects will describe the move, then follow up with has a chance of causing flinching or may burn the target? Okay, but what's the chance? Long-time players know and see patterns where moves like Thunder tend to have the 30% chance to cause the status, but moves like Thunderbolt will have the lower 10% chance. But even that isn't consistent. Scald is an 80 base power move that has a 30% chance to burn and normal accuracy. You can't always follow patterns and make educated guesses. It's not just Pokemon. Other JRPGs are guilty of this all the time. In Octopath Traveler, you can equip passive skills called support skills. You can only equip 4 support skills at a time, and there's almost 50 of them, so you have to be very selective and make sure they synergize well. Despite how established Square Enix is with turn-based combat, these skill descriptions don't always tell you any numbers or percentages. Look at these skills. The first one, well, ignoring the mistranslation, actually tells you the percentage chance, 25%. Excellent. The player can decide if they like those odds and equip it accordingly. Now, what about the other 3? Stronger Strikes increases damage dealt when striking a foe's weak point. Elemental Aid makes elemental attacks consume double SP, but also deal additional damage. Augmented Elements increases damage dealt by elemental attacks. Okay, so let's say I only had room for one more skill. Which one adds the most damage? Does it do more compared to the other 40-something skills in the game? Where's the numbers? Let's try and reason it out. Elemental Aid makes me expend double a resource in exchange for more damage. So maybe that means double damage? Seems like a fair guess. Stronger Strikes and Augmented Elements both use the exact same phrase, increases damage dealt, as opposed to deal additional damage. So maybe it's the same multiplier? Well, I googled it, and it turns out that Augmented Elements is a 1.2 times boost, Elemental Aid is a 1.5 times multiplier, and finally Stronger Strikes makes an existing 1.3 times modifier a 1.5 times modifier. And yes, I did have to look up how much hitting a weakness actually affects damage in Octopath Traveler. Before this video, I didn't know. I just accepted that it was vaguely more. It's less of a problem in Octopath Traveler 2, not because they tell you the multipliers, they're just more unique skills, so you don't have to compare vague expressions as much. Anyway, the point is that devs should put the numbers in, just say them. This suggestion is honestly for all turn-based or stat and modifier-heavy games. In the case of Pokemon, just say in the move description that Scald has a 30% chance to burn the target, and say that Torrent ability causes a 1.5 times boost when health is less than a third. Then have the data about crit rate, stab, and the math of temporary stat increases or drops in a help menu somewhere. Again, with numbers. This is a good thing you did, Pokemon. Expand on it. Do not remove it. The final reason is unpleasant, but necessary to talk about. I'm such a strong advocate for in-game resources simply because people occasionally gatekeep in a negative way. The type of gatekeeping I'm referring to is the activity of controlling and limiting general access to something. There is a constant influx of new players that are exposed to competitive play from many sources. They saw a VGC bracket on the official Pokemon website, they came across a false swipe gaming video, they got smoked in the schoolyard. Those new players may eventually do research and seek out knowledge and answers from the community. They may comment on YouTube, check Reddit, read Smogon posts, read Bulbapedia pages. There are so many ways to be exposed to competitive play, and many different ways people can be exposed to communities. There's a wealth of information to be found, posted and curated by some amazing and dedicated people. It's absolutely wonderful, and that's the truth. However, here is another truth, an unfortunate truth of the world. If a community exists, there can be gatekeepers, elitists, and unpleasant people in it. Every single grouping of people can have this problem, and no one is immune or exempt, not even the Pokemon community. People being extremely sore losers and lacking accountability. People believing that others have to play and enjoy the game exactly the same way they do and for the same reasons as they do. Hostile and misinformed people. These are people who usually are not trained to speak to people professionally. They usually aren't financially or socially incentivized to speak to people properly. It's anonymous and online, with a low penalty. Even in my comments section, I see them. A fair amount of my viewers are children. They often know less or don't have the emotional regulation or critical thinking to have a fair debate. However, I am sometimes mortified to see young adults or people in their 30s clowning on a small child for a comment. There was one comment where a kid was really intensely trying to pitch why there needs to be a stinky type and some other type like digital type. The kid was writing an essay about why we need these two types, which Pokemon can become these types, the moves to add for the types, the works. These types would be strong against Fairy, Steel, and Water simply because those are the best, and weak against Bug, Ice, and Rock because they are the worst. Needless to say, the ideas were a little unrealistic. It was completely unfounded headcanon, and it had absolutely nothing to do with the topic of punching moves. But the kid was trying their best to have a discussion. You can engage politely, or not engage at all. Both are fine. However, if you bully a kid like that and lord your competitive knowledge over them, You're just adding to the stereotype that competitive players are socially stunted, elitist, fun-hating adult men with no other life prospects. You're also adding evidence to the bad stereotypes that already plague innocent people who happen to be gamers, male, socially awkward, or like stuff from Japan. It's not a good look, folks. It's not limited to bullying children either. I have a bunch of friends who struggle to discuss and play Pokémon and other competitive games because the best ways to gain knowledge and experience puts them in a position where they experience hostility and discrimination not because of their actions, but their demographic. It is a deep and complicated problem to solve since so much of this is online now, and the anonymity of the internet makes people really comfortable saying things they shouldn't. Luckily for new people, Pokemon has stuff like Bulbapedia and Cerebi, so people can grab the data and go. It would just be a nice option to have more data referenceable in-game. That way, if it's needed, a player can circumvent negative interactions, especially if they're more vulnerable to them. Okay, we've covered quite a lot and I've got to account for attention spans and multitasking, so here's a quick summary of the video. It's good that Scarlet and Violet improved the Pokemon Trainer School. It's more in-depth, gives exact numbers, offers you practice when combining modifiers, and it's optional. All of those factors together are important, and I believe that it should be refined, expanded, and standardized in the series, preferably in the form of a key item or a help menu. Tell me in the comments, what Pokemon mechanic do you feel was taught to you way too late? I'm curious. That's all I've got, and I'll see you some other time. Bye!